Hello, my quilting friends. I'm Leah Day, a professional quilter, author, and online teacher. And this podcast is all about quilting, running a creative business, and balancing our busy hands with our busy lives. You can find the episode show notes and links to everything mentioned in this podcast at leahday.com. Enjoy the show. Hello, my quilting friends. Leah Day here with episode 23 of the podcast. And today I have a great interview with April Wells. She is a longarm quilter and she blogs at sodarncutequilting.blogspot.com. And it was just a really good interview talking about how she transitioned into longarm quilting, how she got into it. She started out with a home sewing machine and then put it on a small quilting frame, and then transitioned up to a bigger longarm on a bigger frame. And I just found that really fascinating to hear how she fits longarm quilting into her life. She also homeschools. And the more I talk to longarm quilters, the more I realize that this is one of the most perfect businesses to own for working moms. I mean, it really is. And it was wonderful talking to April and seeing how she fits it into her life and how all of that works. So I hope you're looking forward to this interview and you'll check out April's website. Again, it's sodarncutequilting.blogspot.com. Now for a few updates around the house. I just got back from a fun, short little trip with James. We went to Charleston to visit family and hang out with my sisters and their kids, my nieces and nephews. And I ended up doing some babysitting, which is kind of fun. That's kind of novelty, I guess, for me. James being 10, I don't really need to do that kind of thing with him anymore. But the kids ranged in age from 9 months old to, James is 10, so he had a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 9-month-old. And I was keeping all the kids at once, and it was kind of lucky because I stopped off at Tandy Leather on the way down and bought a whole lot of leather kits. So I was like, just kind of spying out some really simple projects that we could do together. So I got a kit that was just basically plain leather coasters, just some circles of leather, and then a starter kit of just some basic stamps, and then a little purse kit, and then James picked out a compass kit where it would be like a little pouch to hold a compass that he would put on his belt loop. So got down there, got all the kids wrangled together, we ate some dinner, and then for the youngest, I just put the baby in a walker and he just kind of happily walked around us and scooted his little scooter around. And then the 3-year-old, I handed her a stamp and the circle of leather, and she happily banged it to death and back again. I gave her a wet paper towel and gave her the job of making sure the leather stayed wet. And she took that very, very seriously. And then James and his oldest cousin had them stitching their projects, and pretty much between all of these kids together, basically I would kind of help one and then move to the next one and then move back to the next one. So I had no time to work on a project for myself, but keeping everybody busy and helping them stitch, it was just really fun and very easy. And if you're at all interested in leather work, definitely find a Tandy Leather store. They're filled to the brim with tools and materials and supplies, and they have lots of kits to put together. And the kits are great because they come with everything that you need. You've got the leather, you've got stamped holes, you've got the string to sew it together with, and it comes with the needle too if you need a needle to stitch the project together. So it's really a great way to get started in a very easy, low-cost way. And then it really made me think a lot about quilt shops, to supply everything that you need for a small quilt, have everything already pre-cut. It's why pre-cuts have basically been so successful. Having it already cut makes it that much faster and easier to get into, and takes the risk out of the project, but also including thread, making sure that someone has the right thread to piece it together, has the right thread to quilt it, and batting and backing, those extra details can sometimes be a big challenge. Sometimes I think we forget that someone that's never made a quilt before might not know that a quilt is 3 layers and that they need a big piece of backing fabric and they need some batting to go in the middle. I don't know. It just made me start thinking about all of that stuff, and I had a great time playing with the kids, and it was a little exhausting, I will be honest. And I talked to Dad afterwards. He was like, "Yeah, sometimes I leave Charleston and come home and I'm more exhausted than when I when I went down there, because it's a lot of work keeping that many kids." And definitely made me thankful for my sisters and their children, and also the wonderful kid that I have coming home. So that was great. So getting into leather work, it's something that I got into, I think this winter was really when I first started getting fascinated by it. And mostly the reason I got into it is I wanted to make a costume very quickly, or pieces of a costume really quickly. And I realized it's much easier and faster to rivet something together, to stamp it together with rivets rather than sew it together. I was sewing Josh this crazy cool jacket for his Deadpool costume, and that took months. And then I was doing something else, I can't remember what, and I just riveted together a cool bracelet, and I did it in a matter of 10 minutes, and that completely solidified my desire to get into leather work with that. And the neat thing is you can cut quilting designs into leather and then stamp it to really make it stand out and look beautiful. So, like a quilted feather, you could cut that into leather and then use different tools to enhance the design and make it stand out really pretty. So I love things like that. I love combining different crafts together. So like a design from quilting being put onto leather. I love that kind of thing. It's why I got into woodworking again after many years of not really messing around with it. I saw some quilting designs that were cut into wood with a scroll saw, and that just totally fascinated me. So I love it when things cross over, and right now I've been feeling a nudge to kind of pull all of that together and make a few pieces that combine all of these different skills that I have. And I'm going to write a post on this later this week, so be looking for it on the blog, but basically just kind of a celebration of all of those different crafts. So to make a small quilt is kind of my first plan, very small quilt, like 8 inches, and then turn a hanging rod essentially for it, and then do a leather frame, and then have it actually, the thing to hang it on the wall would be a beaded necklace. You could detach it and actually wear it as a necklace. I love things like that. I mean, I know it's kind of like, wow, that's a lot of steps to make that, Leah. But it's one of those things, you've got to follow an inspiration. And whenever your brain fires off that little nudge, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do this? Or wouldn't it be nice to work in red? Or wouldn't it be fun to add thread, like a really funky thread to this quilt? Something like that. I really think it's important to honor that and to follow that nudge. When you ignore it, for me, the nudge never goes away. It's always there, and it's kind of eating at me. It continues to fire. I'm going to nudge you until you give in and go do it. I find that when I wait, my passion for the project is usually less, and so I get a lot more picky about it, and it just doesn't end up working as well as when I follow the nudge right when it happens. So if you're feeling that way, and especially I find in the summertime, it's such a good time to be creative because it's so warm and there's so many things blooming and there's so many things that you can do. And it's just pretty outside, and that's inspiration by itself. So I've really been thinking about that a lot, and be looking for a post on this. I hope to share some photos because I already got started on this project, and I'm really excited about where it's going. So several quilters wrote in and asked how things are going with James and transcription. This was Michael. I shared this maybe 2 podcasts ago whenever he was just getting out of school. So I was recording audio for a book and then giving it to James to transcribe so that he would learn not only a little bit about spelling, he'd also learn a little bit about typing too. And that worked out really good. I was really, really pleased. And I paid him the same amount that I was paying for a transcription service, which was $1 per minute. And it would take him roughly, 10 to 15 minutes per minute of audio, because he's very much a hunt and pecker, doesn't really know where the keys are on the keyboard, but he definitely sped up by the end. And I found that keeping the audio files short, so under 10 minutes, was really important. I had a really long audio file, and it was hard to even convince him to get started and try it, even though it didn't take him that long to do it. So it worked out really, really well. I'm really pleased, and I want to give him more on that, but I have kind of stepped away from that project. That's kind of a future book, and I am 100% focused on the Walking Foot book. And this has been in progress since last summer. I had to set it aside, but now I've kind of cleared the decks and it's crunch time. So I'm getting up early in the morning. I'm devoting 2 hours every morning, first thing. I'm not allowed to check email. I'm not allowed to blog. I'm not allowed to do anything else other than work on the book. And I think I'm going to maintain that habit even after I'm done with this. Just whatever book I'm working on, whatever project I'm working on, just the first 2 hours of the day is just that and only that. And it's forcing me to get more focused and get continual get continual progress on that project itself. And that feels amazing. It really, really does. So I have a deadline for myself. I don't know if it's going to be possible to reach it, but it's a deadline I'm going to aim for, and that is July 1st, to have all of the text done for this book. And it is a monster book. It's, 7 chapters, I think, 7 quilt projects. I had it set at 20 designs, and I've decided to bump it up to 30 to 40 designs. Just simply because I really wanted to explore more textures and walking foot quilting designs too. So July 1st to get all of the text solid, and then I'm going to hand it over to my editor, Janice Brewster. She is at Creative Girlfriends Press, and so she basically does this professionally. She edits quilting and crafting books, and I really trust her to do a great job with it and, fix all my mistakes, check, grab all my typos and correct them, and then Josh is going to go through it too. And then the debate is how we're going to have the layout done, because right now it's just raw text. I've spliced in a few photos here and there where I know I'm going to have a diagram, and I've already finished it. I've already made the diagram. But for the most part, it's very raw and very rough. And so Josh and I have been debating who gets to lay it out, whether we hire that out or do it ourselves. And my vote is to hire it out because it'll be done faster, but it costs obviously a lot of money to do that. Josh's vote is for us to do it ourselves, and he's got a really good point with this, and that is, if we do it ourselves, then we have a template and we can do future books easier and faster. And that's a very, very good point. And I really want to produce more books. I want to work on a faster production schedule with these. And I've got so many ideas, so many things like, gosh, wouldn't it be great to have a book on all over quilting? I would love to write a book just on baby quilts, and, all of these different ideas that I have to put it down and get it in paper, and to work faster. Because traditionally published, if you work with a traditional publisher, you may be going to see that book come out in a year or two, more like 2 years. When you're self-publishing, you can come out with a book in a month and maintain that production schedule. And if you can write it and create it, then you can publish it anytime you want to publish it. It's not dependent upon Quilt Market or some other arbitrary date to put it out there. So been thinking about that a lot. What we did most recently on the Megastar workshop, which worked really, really well, is Josh did the rough layout. And he did that completely himself. And we work in a very simple program called Publisher, Microsoft Publisher. And it's not industry standard. I think the industry standard is probably Adobe Illustrator or Adobe InDesign, but this is much simpler, much easier to use, a lot less detailed. And so he did a rough edit and put it together, and it looked great. And then I was able to go in and tweak, okay, that image needs to move here. I can be kind of picky with it and stuff. And so kind of shifted things around a little bit, handed it back to Josh, and we kind of went back and forth with it. But he did the bulk of the rough work, just figuring out, okay, the text is going to go like this, and then the image is going to be over here. And I mean, I know that sounds really simple, But when you're writing a book, it needs to be consistent. So like each quilt pattern has the same system, a photo of the quilt, and then the text is to the left, and then the materials left is below. If you look at a traditionally published book, you'll see that they run in patterns and systems with each page and how it's laid out. So that way it makes really good sense when you're reading it. And sometimes the thing that sets apart, like, is the kind of the big giant red flag that something has been self-published, is that care of layout and design has not been taken, and it's glaring, and I've done it myself. I've self-published multiple books, and I know what separates the good ones from the bad ones is usually the layout. The text is still solid, but the layout's what really crippled the book. So I've learned this before. I've been there, done that. And I think by letting Josh do the bulk of the work, we can work together and get this knocked down. I think we can do it ourselves. So that's exciting. I think it's going to go great. It's going to be what we're focused on through all the rest of the summer. And so long as this book is ready to publish by November, December, we're in good shape, because that's what I'm planning to share next year as our machine quilting block party. So really excited about all of this, and I am feeling really good about the book. Today I just finished a new quilt pattern for it, and I don't know, it's one of those funny things, you can kind of slow down and get stuck, and then that moment that you decide that you're going to go for it and just get the job done, it really does make a very big difference. And a book that I just recently read, it was really, really helpful for this, is called The War of Art. I keep meaning to say The Art of War, but that's something very different. The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. It's very short. I got it on audiobook, and it's like 2.5 hours, which is a very short audiobook. So I've already listened to it twice through. And it's basically about resistance, that thing that stops us from creating, that thing that distracts us, that keeps us away from making beautiful things. And I've listened to it twice. I find this book very, very helpful. And so if there's anything that you've been encountering that has been, like you want to do something but you're not doing it, most likely it's resistance, and this book will help with that. And I think a lot of my issues with writing and getting the layout done and perfection and all complication and all of that kind of good stuff has been resistance, kind of in the disguise of, oh, it's not good enough, oh, you need to do this fancy layout, or oh, you need to change the font through the entire book now that it's done, like crazy stuff like that is just a distraction from what you need to be doing and getting done. So I really recommend that book if you've been feeling the same way. And I think that this is a continual learning process. I don't think there's ever going to be a day that I wake up and I'm free completely of resistance, of feeling like I want to do something, but oh, there's this thing in my way. And you just have to sit down and do the work. That's why I'm dedicating the first 2 hours of every day to writing, because when I do it on a schedule and it's every single day, I get the work done. And this is something else that's been interesting. In the evening, I started sitting down with James and was like, I'm going to work on a project every single evening while we watch Clone Wars together, a TV show together. It's something that James and I always do. We spend a little bit of time together, watch one TV show, and then he goes to bed. So we went through all of Clone Wars, and then now we're on Legends of Tomorrow, which is quite a fun little show. Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, Flash, they're really fun shows. You can get them on Netflix and Amazon, I think. So I have been working on James's puff quilt, and this is a massive project. It's not actually a very big quilt, but it is so many steps to making one single little square. I'm using a puff kit from Clover, and it helps you fold the blocks. And if you've never seen a puff quilt, just Google it. You can see what they look like. They're crazy. And so basically I kind of did it in batches and steps. So I would spend a day folding the squares, and I'd use Wonder Clips to clip them to the backing. And I'm doing mine a little bit different from the instructions that Clover includes, because I just didn't really like the way they put it together. And so I'm constructing the entire quilt, and then I'm going to do the puff. Then I'm going to stuff it. And I am 3 blocks away from having this thing completely together. And it's crazy, because honestly, I didn't realize how much time it would take. And if I had tried to do it, like, okay, it's going to be a, Saturday afternoon project. I'm going to devote like 6 hours on a Saturday to doing this. I would never have gotten it done because, I would have preferred to do something else on my Saturday, or it would have just, been shunted aside, or I would have gotten half of a block done and then set it down, and then I wouldn't have remembered what I was doing. But by working on it every single evening, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I made steady, slow progress, put the pieces together, put the blocks together, and now I'm nearly done. And I know I would not have gotten to this point had I not started setting that time aside to make slow and steady progress on this project. And I think that's really powerful. It is always going to be a marathon, a slow and steady pace. It is never a sprint, especially with a complicated quilt like this. And I will be sharing some videos on it because the way I put this puff quilt together is unusual, and I'm still not quite sure if it's going to work out better, but it worked better for me. So I don't know. It's one of those things you have to kind of take it and figure out, what you want to do with it and then how it will work best. And this is the way, the way I put it together was very much more like a traditional quilt. Now, when it comes to stuffing, I have no idea. I'm crossing my fingers that it's going to work out right. So that's what I've been busy with. I've had a great week. I'm thoroughly enjoying this summer, and I can't wait to finish up my book, finish up this puff quilt, see some wonderful progress on all of these projects. So that's it for the updates around the house. Our sponsor for this week is my website, leahday.com, where you will find machine quilting tools and supplies that will help you quilt your own quilts on your home machine. So one thing that I use in every single video are Machine Gear's gloves. They are quilting gloves. They have grippy tips on the ends to help you get a grip on the quilt and control the movement. It also makes the quilt feel easier to move on your home machine. Sometimes the quilt can feel stuck and your hands are just kind of sliding over the surface. Wearing gloves can really help with that. Now, I wear gloves in every video, but my dad does not like wearing gloves because his hands are massively huge and they don't really fit into the gloves, into the machine gears. And like I said, Dad's hands are really massively huge. He also has arthritis, so that when he puts a lot of pressure on his fingertips, he can start experiencing a lot of pain in his fingers. So instead, Dad likes to use quilting grips. You can find both Machine Gear's quilting gloves and the quilting grips on my website, leahday.com. And now, here's the show. Hello, my quilting friends. Leah Day here with a new interview with a longarm quilter. April Wells is a longarmer behind So Darn Cute Quilting, and you can find her website at sodarncutequilting.blogspot.com. Thank you so much for joining me, April.
Hi there.
It's so nice to see you. I'm so excited about this interview, and we're going to talk about longarm quilting and how you got into it and how you run your business. So let's get started first, just how you got started.
Yeah, the first I got started, I had my son, and I wanted to make him a quilt, and my stepmother quilted, and so I had asked her to help me learn how to quilt, and it was a little tiny quilt pattern from Connecting Threads, and I did just Stitch in the Ditch back then, and that was my first quilt. That's what what got me started on everything. After that, I just kept wanting to do more. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I really loved cutting up the fabric and creating something and doing something besides the dishes and the floors and cleaning and all that stuff. It made me feel like I was accomplishing something.
It was an outlet. I completely understand. I'm right there with you. I was quilting a lot right after my son was born, and it made me feel like I still had that life, outside of changing diapers and feeding kid, So when did you start to think about quilting for other people? When did that start up?
It started out with the Cindy Needham class on Craftsy. I took that class, and I had so many quilt tops, not just like, fabric, just yardage, that I had just made and practiced on and practiced over and over again. And I kind of got obsessed with it. And once that obsession started with free motion quilting on my sit down. I realized I wanted to take it to the next level. And then I went ahead and got a Brother 1500 and a Grace frame and took it to that next level. And once I felt like I had outgrown that and I was receiving king size quilts that weren't really fitting very well on that Grace frame, I had decided I needed to get something with a really nice frame. And what I ended up getting was the Gamel, and I got the 22-inch. And it has a steel frame, and it's very, very sturdy. And I kind of went more for the frame than for the ease of flow, even though it does flow really nice. It was more important to me.
To have a nice, sturdy, stable frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know very little about frames. I've rented some time, but that on a like a local sewing machine place has a frame set up, and so you can go and take a class and learn how to do it. And I've done that a few times, but I really don't know very much. So talk me through the Grace frame that you started with and putting that home machine. The Brother 1500 is a home machine, right?
It is. It's kind of like the Juki, and it's just a straight stitch. It's a real simple machine, but it is heavy duty, and it goes fast compared to your regular sewing machine. And when I got that, I just I wanted something that I could move it around a little bit faster and a little bit different, you know. And so we found on Craigslist for like $200 a Grace frame that was used, and it was wooden, and we brought it home and put it together as best we could, and it worked. It was great, you know. And I had some things that I had to do to make it glide better, and I have all of that. It's on my blog spot, and it's on Midarm Like a Pro, and I just down to the steel rails that I had added to it, to the frame that holds the sewing machine, to this on and off button. Those are a few things that I added, but I did it all for less than $1,000 for the Midarm setup. And it was just something to try out to see, am I ready, you know, just taking it to the next level each time, just to see because once I went from the Midarm frame to the Longarm frame, it kind of felt like it needed to become a business, even though there's no pressure from my husband for it to be a business. But I enjoy quilting other people's quilts because I don't have to piece it. and you know, I get all kinds of different quilts all the time, and I get to be creative with other people's quilts that are already, you know, half the work's already done.
Exactly. And you know, I think that's such a push. You know, I've been quilting my quilts for years, but I can just imagine if you got something totally different that you'd never pieced before, that challenges you in a new way. Cool. So you mentioned that you had just a few struggles with the Grace frame, setting that up and getting your machine on it. Can you talk us through some of the limitations of having a home machine on a frame? I'm about to do this. I'm going to give it a try in a few months, so I want to pick your brain on it a little bit. I plan to get a small Grace frame and probably put a small home sewing machine on it. So talk me through, what are some things that I want to look out for and watch out for right at the beginning?
Yeah, the main thing I suggest is to go for a steel frame. The wooden frame kind of sloped in the middle whenever I put a king size on it, and when you would get to that point with your machine, you would break thread, and it would become frustrating. So I would go for a steel Grace frame or something to that effect. I know you have the Qnique, which is from the Grace company, and you could probably find something that would work really well with that from Grace. I loved the frame, besides the king size part of that droop, you know, in it. But the only other thing is just to have maybe a stitch regulator. And I don't know if the Qnique has a stitch regulator on it already or not. But that was really a big difference from just my home sewing machine on the frame without a stitch regulator to the gamble that had all the bells and whistles, and it has you can do coast regulate, where you can go, where you can move the machine and it moves with you. Like, it goes at the same speed that you're moving. And that's really nice. And you can also change the stitch length, and you can change how fast the speed of it goes for the gamble. And going to that was a lot of fun, because it just made it where I could do more and my stitches looked the same, because if I was going to take a big old swoop, then I wouldn't have a big long stitch, at the front.
Yeah, that balancing action is always, I'm always saying it's a ratio, speed and movement. It's a ratio, but it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around. I saw just recently, I was at a Bernina dealership, and I was amazed by the quality of the stitch regulator in the machine, because it was very obvious on this sample. Like, lots of people that were not very skilled had been playing on it, but all the stitches were the same size. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
remarkable, because, I know from teaching free motion quilting that everyone has different stitch length. It's a kind of a transition, but if the stitch regulator is that powerful and able to control everybody down to have one set stitch length, that's amazing. And I think that finally that's starting to catch up, and finally starting to really get the quality. Several years ago, I was writing articles and stuff, and it was like, I just don't think stitch regulators are really worth it. But I'm thinking these days they have definitely improved. So the thing that comes up a lot, and I don't know if this has come up for you or not, but when I was getting into quilting and I was considering a long arm, the thing that kept kind of pushing me back was the price. So you want to talk a little bit about that, like just how you were able to rationalize the expense of going even to the Grace frame and putting that $1,000 into your setup, and how you had that conversation with your husband and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been supportive. He sees that quilting is something that I love to do, and that it helps me every day. I also homeschool, so I get up, we do our chores, we homeschool, and then I get to go do my quilting. So it's kind of something that is like a perk, even though it's also a business. When we decided to go from the mid-arm setup to the long arm setup, it was a big price jump. I think it was $11,000 for the gamble, and it was used, and it was exactly what I wanted. And it had just come in; they had traded out for somebody else, and I told my husband, I said, this is the one I really want to get. And so, he's fine with it, me not doing it as a business. Or I've also thought about doing show quilts only. I'm not quite to that level yet, I don't think. I'm not, but I could be,
Yeah,
slowly. I see myself growing towards being able to do that.
Yeah, I've seen your photos and they're amazing. Your quilting is just gorgeous. So I definitely think that that's open to you. I think you should rock it,
Yeah, and there was a show here recently, and I had done a quilt for a girl that I had we just moved to Arkansas, and I'd done a quilt for her, and she said, do whatever you want. And I love it when they say that. So I just did whatever I wanted, and I just went crazy on her borders. She gave me huge borders, and it came out really nice. And that quilt is the colorway quilt on the blog. But yeah, but he also said, that I could quilt, for as a business either way. And because of the cost of it, I do feel that obligation to quilt as a business. But I also I go through ups and downs. One month, I'm really into quilting, and the next month, it's not so much. But I also I get so excited when somebody sends me a quilt. It's like, oh, they want me to do something for them, So that brings the excitement back in, and it comes in waves, So it's not always like I'm slammed all the time quilting, which is nice. because we like to go on walks, and I like to do stuff with my kids because they're little, and that is fun to me to do that and to be able to spend time with them. But they also spend a lot of time in my quilting room with me, and that's also fun. My little one likes to quilt. My older one doesn't really care for it.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think that's an amazing role, like a role model to set. You know, you might not even think of it this way, but like I grew up hanging out with my dad and my grandpa in my dad's wood shop. And while like the bug to play with wood didn't really fall off of me, although I do have a lathe and I play with that sometimes. You know, for me it was just seeing people make stuff. Was really important to me, and I think a really big part of my childhood was just you know, walking into the wood shop, the smell, like seeing them cut things and craft something beautiful and make this complete them themselves. And that always made me want to sit and bang nails and smash my fingers and stuff. So, you know, I really think that that's good for your kids to see that and to grow up in that atmosphere. So describe to me the process of how the Long Army system works. So someone mails you a quilt or drops off a quilt, and then what happens next?
Yeah, as soon as I receive a quilt, I'll take it out and I'll usually, no matter what, you still have to do a little bit of ironing to it because it was either boxed up or on a hanger, and I'll iron it out and I'll measure it and make sure that the backing is big enough, cut the batting and make sure that the batting is big enough for the quilt top. And the quilt top always is about 4 to 6 inches all around smaller than the backing should be. It's just the way the long arm loads a quilt compared to sit down free motion quilting. So once I get it all measured out, I'll put it on the frame and I'll do a little bit of quilting on it from what we discussed on what you know the client would like to have, and I'll take a picture and I'll send it to them just to make sure that we're on the same page. And once that picture's accepted, I'll keep going and I'll finish the quilt out, and I can trim it up or square it up. And I usually take pictures of each quilt outside and post them on my blog. And I'll go ahead, once it's all finished, I'll wrap it up and put it in a plastic bag and then box it up and take it to the post office or meet up with somebody if they're local, and I'll send it with an invoice. And then when I get home, I'll email you the tracking number and let you know where the quilt is in the process of.
Excellent. So typically, how long does it take to finish a quilt, like start to finish?
It depends. It usually takes about 3 to 6 weeks, depending on what type of quilting needs to be done. If it's for probably about 3 weeks.
So the thing that seems to always come up whenever I talk to a long armer is pricing. So tell me about pricing and how you handle that, how you deal with the pricing issue.
Well, a lot of for just to like quick all over quilting, I'll do 2 cents per square inch, and that's what I do. And I do charge, for thread. It's usually about $8 to $10 for a thread, and batting I charge $9 a yard, which is for the 80/20 heirloom blend, and so it goes up from there. So mid-custom quilting is about 3 to 4 cents a square inch, and that is just like taking your quilt and kind of enhancing the piecing and making it kind of shine a little bit through your piecing. And for full-on custom is where it's probably about 5 or 6 cents a square inch, and it has very details, like very tiny work inside of the piecing. And what I like to do is just to make the quilt, I really prefer to do the mid-custom work because I can go in and make the quilt really shine through what my clients already put together, the piecing, and make, like, if it's a star, kind of make the star echo the star and then quilts inside of it as well. And just to kind of bring out the character of the quilt.
Absolutely. And I think that's awesome because so often when you look at the piecing, that's just one layer, one dimension. And when you add quilting on top of it, it adds that extra dimension of design, and you can create things in the quilting you can't really create as easily in the piecing. You know, you can
Yes.
add circles on top of it, and you didn't
Yeah.
have to piece those circles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've got a really good system for pricing based on the square inch. So do you think that people will send you smaller quilts, or do the quilts that you mostly get are they mostly bigger?
Most of the time, they're about a full size quilt. If that's usually the the range that I get. I get all kinds of things. I had one lady recently send me fabric and batting, and I did a coloring quilt for her. So she's going to take it and paint it, and
Cool.
that was a lot of fun. So I got to do some straight lines for. She said first I went straight lines on one part, and then the other part you do whatever you want. And so one part's all straight lines and another part's all curls and swirls and all kinds of stuff. But that was a lot of fun. And I I have a customer that I've had since the mid arm, and she always sends me quilts. So and that is real comforting to have her, because it seems like just when I'm going through the not quilting phase, she'll send me one, and sometimes she'll send me quite a few at once, so it gets me right back into it.
Excellent. So it does sound like it comes in waves. That's what you said. Is there anything that you've noticed, where like all the quilts come in right before Christmas? Anything like that?
That did happen to me. The first Christmas I had my long arm, and I was able to get them all out before Christmas, by the due date that and because what I do for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we don't do homeschool. Instead of, we take off our time instead of summertime, we take it off during Thanksgiving and Christmas because that's when I'm the busiest, and that seems to work, you know, so I can spend the whole day in my sewing room quilting during that time.
That makes sense. I would love to have that time off out of the year rather than the summer, which I'm always like, what am I going to do with this kid? you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you do with your kids during the summertime to, I guess you just continue your homeschooling routine throughout the summer?
Yeah, we do. We do the homeschool through. It's kind of like an all year program, and we take off. We do it Monday through Friday still, and we take off. About 3 months out of the year, and it's just kind of randomly placed. We'll usually do homeschooling for about 4 weeks, and then we'll take off a week, stuff like that, just to kind of give them a break. But in the summertime, we'll also go to the swim park. So they like to do that. But we've just moved onto 20 acres. So they have, we have pigs and chickens and one-day cows, and so they help tend to all those animals. They take care of them, and they make forts, and we have a creek, and they go play in that. And I try to keep them outside as much as possible, and off of their devices and the TV. It gets
Yes.
difficult though.
Yes, yes. We had a big crackdown. It was over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, where we had to take everything away, and we went down to 20 minutes earned every day. You could only get 20 minutes, and you gotta earn it, and it. Gosh, it changed everything. It was very hard for the first
Yeah.
3 months. It was very tough. But I agree with you. I think being outside, send them outside. Sometimes I'm like, James, I'm gonna lock the door. You can bang on it 3 times if you need to use the bathroom, but like I'm gonna lock the door. You gotta stay outside, man. And it's good for him and it's good for us, so it works out well. And he's not bored. He's got 30 chickens. We've got chickens too, and ducks,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
dog and a cat. It's like you've got friends. Go outside and play with them.
Yes, go play with them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you do a really good job of balancing all of these roles, and this is something that I really struggle with. So, when you are, have lots of quilts that you're quilting and you're really, really busy, what are some tips that you use to keep balanced and not kind of go crazy with the stress of all of that pressure?
Well, I have a hard time with that because when when I get into my quilting mode, I'm all quilting, and it's really difficult for me to stop and go make dinner. My husband's really good about calling me when he's on his way home. Kind of, he doesn't say anything, but it's just kind of I know it's a reminder, go clean the kitchen and start dinner. So he keeps me centered. My husband's, he doesn't complain about anything, but he just tries to keep me, focused at all around. Um, but what I mainly do is I have a list, and I'm not the best at the list, but I know that Mondays are cleaning the bathrooms, and you know what I mean. I know that these days are certain things, and they don't always get done. I'm not real strict about my list, but I do try and make sure, that I do something inside, and then I do something in my quilting room. I think it just like breaks up the day really nice.
Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I feel you on the list thing. It's like, oh, that didn't make the list, therefore it didn't get done.
Yeah.
So I completely understand. So tell me about how long you've run the business and really where you're wanting to go and branch out, moving forward.
Yeah, I got my mid arm in 2013. I probably started quilting for others in about 2014, and then I got my long arm in 2015. I What I really want to do is I want to do more show quilts, not just for me but for other people. And I really love doing the custom work. It's where I shine, I think, and it's my favorite thing to do. Um, I I there for a while I thought about maybe, having an online fabric store and all that stuff and making my own patterns and everything. But what I really, really like to do is quilt. And so I decided that that's really probably not the best option for me, because it takes a lot of work to like what you do. It takes a lot of work and to make patterns. And I tried on Inkscape to make my own pattern, but I still have not succeeded. So I think I do best if I'm out, not in front of the computer, and I have my blog, and I think that takes enough of my time.
Yeah, I completely agree. There are times when I'm like, I just have to get away from it. I really want to go quilt. And just this week, I've been quilting quite a lot, and it feels so good to be off the computer and away from, I still have social media nearby because I've got my phone next to me, but, to just kind of disengage from all of that stuff and to just focus on the quilting. And I think that's really where your skill is built. It's not built
Yeah.
surfing Facebook,
No.
it's only ever built if you're actually quilting. So actually, let's talk about that real quick. How did you build the skill? Because going from a domestic, you started on a domestic, you were, sit down style quilting, and then you transitioned to the Grace frame and your home machine. Tell me about that transition and what you quilted to gain control of your stitching and that moving that machine that different way.
Yeah, I first started with charity quilts, and I love doing them because you can do whatever you want and nobody's going to complain, and you can just go crazy on them. So I had an angel that I did at first that was a panel, and that was a lot of fun. I put feathers in her wings, and where I learned all of how to do most of the free motion quilting was from Cindy Needham or from your videos that I watched. And so if I needed a background filler, I'd go straight to your website and look in your library and see, what could I put in that spot? And then watch your video on how to do it. It does go a little bit backwards from the putting your hands on the fabric and moving the fabric that way. You have to kind of get a grip on it, I guess, on how to move the machine instead of the fabric. And I went through many, many testing strips of fabric, that I would just throw solid fabric on, and I would do different things. I would test out different things. And I found out the best way to actually practice is either with a panel or with a charity quilt, because it has pieced. parts. It has the points and everything that you can use to make your direction and your lines. And I know that you're just now getting into with your templates, with your rulers and stuff like that, and that is the funnest part. That's the best part to me, is getting out the rulers and seeing which one's going to work here and which one's going to work there, because my lines are more precise with the ruler, and then I go free motion on the filler.
Yeah, I've just gotten into that, and I love ruler foot quilting on a home machine, and I've been playing with it on the long arm too. I think it's such an awesome thing, especially because that came from long arms. Like,
Yeah.
long armers invented this whole brand new thing, and then now home machine quilters are kind of trying it out, and it works on both, and I think that's just awesome. So you got into the ruler work and doing the fills and stuff and moving the machine. Were there any kind of drills or anything, like whenever I change this up and try a frame, what would you advise me to try first?
Excuse me, what did you say again?
What would you advise me to try first? Like straight line quilting, or like if I'm trying to learn, like the thing that I've struggled with is any kind of travel stitching. I can't follow the line.
Yeah, I would get you a straight edge ruler, and I would get you one that you can fit in your hand. And I put a little suction cup on the top of it to kind of move it around, and just a plain old suction cup. If it has a little metal piece on it, you take that off. And you can put your fingers over the top of that and just twist it around easier. It gives you kind of a grip, and if you can hold the template in your hand, it makes it a lot easier to turn and to have more control over what you're doing. And your speed increases too if it's not this huge long template that you have. I would definitely start with a straight template, and I would get some curved templates too. You know, that like an oval one is always fun, or there's so many out there that are really, really good. But if you are going to look for a template, you want it to have straight lines, your 1/4 inch line mark on there, and you want to have some diagonal lines, your different angles, so that you can make different turns with that ruler. Even if it's a curved ruler or if it's a straight ruler, you want to have those different marks on there. And Quilters Apothecary, they have some great rulers. And the Quilted Pineapple, I think, Linda Hecker, I think, she has some really great rulers too.
Excellent. That's wonderful. I know that the biggest limitation that I'm going to run into, if I'm planning on leaving the Qnique in a table, and I have like a spare machine, and I'm going to put that spare small machine on the frame. And I know one of the biggest limitations is as you roll the quilt, the space that you have to quilt into shrinks and becomes smaller. So how did you deal with that?
When I had the Brother 1500 on there, it would go down sometimes to 6 inches of space. So my quilting was really small. It was really dense quilting, and that's just what it was at that time. Now that I've gone to the bigger one, it's hard to increase the size of my quilting because I'm so used to the small space that I was working in before and making the small pebbles or swirls or whatever it was. With that machine, you just have to roll it. You have to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you have a long strip, and try and make lines, try to be able to use up that amount of space while you're quilting it as much as you can before you have to roll it. And I mark my quilts with a water soluble pen, so I can kind of see where my next step is going to take me.
That totally makes sense. So, talking about show quilting, I absolutely love show quilting. I have to ask, have you read Karen McTavish's book, Quilted for Show?
No, but I was just listening to a podcast, and I want to read it so bad. I was just listening to somebody talking about, I can't remember what podcast it was, it's two girls, and they were talking about her book, and they are getting ready for a show, and they were talking about what she suggests to do. And I'm part of a modern quilt guild here in Northwest Arkansas, and we're talking about putting on a show, a modern quilt show. And so I was thinking we need to really get that book so that we kind of know what to do, as far as accepting quilts. And also, it would be nice to have for me, her work is amazing.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
She was such an inspiration to me at the beginning. And actually, that was the turning point, was getting her books woke up my mind to McTavishing and then all these amazing things that you could do. And then it was like, I've got to make a show quilt. I've got to get that ribbon, and I won my first ribbon from a quilt that I designed after reading her book. So it's very special to me. And I don't think that book's in print anymore, but you might be able to find it maybe used, sold somewhere. But it's absolutely worth it because she really goes into detail about what judges are looking for. And the number one piece of advice I absolutely agree with is make a whole cloth. Trapunto, design it, make a whole cloth,
Yeah. Yeah, I have a bunch of silk that is just sitting for that whole cloth. It's just waiting. It's just sitting over there waiting for that. It's been sitting there for a couple of years. So.
Oh, no. Get it out and do it. You got to do it. It's going to be so rewarding, especially, that finished quilt is still super, super special to me. And, of course, the whole journey of a whole cloth, I kind of felt like I learned how to quilt all over again, making that quilt, because the level of detail is just, it takes it up another notch, but I love it. And my favorite part is the part everybody else hates. I love clipping the batting away for trapunto. I'm like, it's like the most relaxing thing in the world to me. I could do that every day.
Yes. Yeah, I've really been thinking about it, and I have a bunch of fabric that I have, put aside, just for that. And that's my dream to do one day. And like you said, I just need to get it out, and I just need to get started on it, because it's not doing any good sitting over there folded up.
Exactly. And, the design, that's where you get the ultimate place to play, where you can do anything that you want, absolutely anything. And it's total custom quilting. That was just a lot of fun, and it's one of those things that it's like always on my list to start another whole cloth design. I don't get to it all the time, but I love making them. They're really, really fun. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us about your business and how you balance it all and how you got started. So share with me real quick. This is the question I always ask everybody. What are you most excited about moving forward, like the next 5 years, whether it's business, personal, it can be a combination of the two. Just where are you going and what are you most happy about?
Well, it's truthfully, we have moved from Texas to Arkansas. We live now in 20 acres, and I want some cows like there is no tomorrow. I want some milking cows, and we bought a house that needs fixing up, and we're working on fixing it up and getting it, how we want it. And just going through that process, with my husband and, working together on a project, is great. And as far as quilting goes, I just, I want to grow. I always want to be growing and learning new things. And I don't know what direction they'll take me in, but I do want to grow always.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I wish you the best of luck on your 20 acres and getting those cows. I love raw milk, so I'm like, I completely understand.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, share with everybody where they can find you online so they can come and check you out.
Yeah, I'm at So Darn Cute Quilting, and it's on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and Blog Loving.
Excellent. And if somebody wants you to long arm a quilt for them, they can just get in touch with you on any of those platforms?
They can. You can reach me. I have an email, So Darn Cute, which is SEWDARNCUTE quilting @gmail.com, or my phone number is 479-233-1835.
Excellent. Well, I hope you get lots of new customers and many people come and get you to long arm their quilts.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So that's it for this episode. If you'd like to find more episodes of the Hello My Quilting Friends podcast, check it out at leahday.com/podcast. We have a player that will play through all of the episodes shared so far, so you can binge listen for hours on end. Until next time, let's go quilt.